And I have a few questions that were asked in the questionnaire when people signed up. And I'm going to call on those folks. And then I'm also going to take other questions. So, because I don't actually have a bunch of questions, and I'm guessing that at least some of you have a question now that you've watched this much of the session. So please feel free to use that question box and type your questions in there, or raise your hand if you want to get my attention and I can simply call on you. What I'm going to do is unmute your microphone, and then you can ask your question and we can talk about it. And I'm going to start with a veteran. I'm going to start with Jared. Good evening, Jared. I've just unmuted your microphone.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
That's good.
So, what can I do for you?
Actually, I think you did a pretty good job. My interest in responsive website has been from the standpoint that there seems to be a lot of iPhone and iPad users, and the majority of the users, I think, are going there instead of on the regular monitor, what we know as what we've all been doing. And as such, it seems to me some of that information that's shows up on the big monitor, some of it is a lot of, pardon the expression, garbage on a smaller screen. And I've seen some sites, like I told you, I think I sent you the copy of Panera Bread, and how their site, they use more like a nav menu to click here to go to another page. And I like that idea very much so.
Yeah, now that is, however, not a responsive site. What they do is they redirect a mobile device to a mobile specific site. And if you do this, you can see, it's not responding to the browser window. It's just...
I know that. You mean like a Mobi site?
Yeah.
.mobi?
Well, I don't know if it's a .mobi or not, because my phone's upstairs and I haven't gone to it, but...
No, it doesn't. It's still a .com site, but the thing is, because I checked that out, but how does the iPhone pick up on it to know to get redirected or whatever?
Well, redirection isn't done by the iPhone. Redirection is done by the server. The server queries each device that calls for a web page, and it asks that device what kind of device it is. And then it serves up the page based on the answer. Now, that's different than a responsive site, but that's what happens on my site, right? If you're on my site on a mobile device and you click on one of my videos, you get an entirely different video. I mean, you get a video designed to be viewed on a mobile device. Even though my site isn't responsive and it's not a mobile site, nevertheless, I have a number of mobile users and more iPad users, and so I went to a lot of expense and effort to make sure that my video all played on mobile devices. And that's made possible not because the site is responsive and not because the site is a mobile site, but because I have a piece of software on the site that asks each visitor what kind of device they have, and if the answer comes back it's a mobile device, then it serves mobile video rather than the regular video.
You say that's quite involved to do that?
Well, no. I mean, if you've gone through my thesis lessons, you'll see I have a plugin for doing that, for serving up mobile content on a non-mobile site. But
I never knew that.
Yeah, but that's not making it responsive. That's just delivering mobile content when the choice is mobile content or regular content. On the other hand, in this case, right, this site, let's just get to it. This site is responsive, right? So it automatically changes based on the browser window. The responsive site is not asking what kind of device is it. The responsive site is asking what's the width of the browser window. And it's essentially the browser is saying, okay, well, I'm this wide, so based on this width, I'm going to use this CSS rule, which is how the site resizes as the browser window resizes. And that's the difference between a responsive site and a mobile site. Right? The mobile site's something that's designed specifically to look in a mobile phone. A responsive site is a site that is intended to look good on a mobile phone, but it's the exact same site. It just changes appearance as the width of the viewing device changes.
Sounds as confusing to me, but all I know is that if you shrink that down to the size of an iPhone column, it's just a lot easier to read down. And like I said, what I had noticed was that a lot of sites have going. I think they're using. They say click here or tap here to talk, and it automatically calls them on the iPhone.
Yeah.
And or click here and it takes them to another page, like restaurants, for example. Click here for the menu, that sort of thing. And I just find that a lot easier to navigate through the website.
Well, I agree that mobile support has become more and more important. I mean, it's essentially the reason why this course and the next course that we're teaching are all about, creating a site that is responsive.
Mm-hmm.
The next course we're teaching is how to create a responsive child theme for Thesis. Genesis has a, fairly large selection of responsive tools. Thesis doesn't currently, but I will start teaching a class in May on how to do that in Thesis too. So,
Mm-hmm.
but nevertheless, that's responsive design. It means that the width of the browser window dictates the size of elements and how it's displayed.
That's very important for the end user to quickly get to where he's going.
Yes, I agree. Anything else?
No,
Okay.
I just need to understand things a little better, and I'll catch on as you go along.
Perfect. Well, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Tom Maloney had a question. Tom, I've just unmuted your microphone. Good evening, Tom.
Hello.
Hi, Tom.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay.
So you had a question about programming and site structure and data and that kind of stuff. Or am I thinking of somebody else? Tom, did I lose you? Well, I had him, and then I lost him. I'm going to leave him.
Right.
Oh, are you there?
And relating them. Yes. You can't hear me anymore?
Okay, now I can hear you. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you there for a while, but I can hear you now.
I'm having the same problem with you throughout the course. You disappeared for periods.
Oh, that's not good.
But I think it may be my setup here.
Okay, so let's go ahead and try the question again then.
Are keeping track of customer data online, and you want the customers' data to be available to them and not to anyone else. How do you do that?
Okay, so if I understood you correctly, you asked about keeping track of customer data and exposing that data to the customer, but not exposing it to the rest of the world. Right. And WordPress does have a fairly robust set of tools built in for that. And it's called the WordPress user role system. And WordPress is designed to have users and designed to control access and function based on the user's role. Now, we're not really talking about that in this beginner's class, but essentially what you do is you create the user, and then you protect the data so that it is only displayed to that user or to certain levels of administrative use. And depending upon the kind of data you're talking about, so for example, if you've got a shopping cart and your user, wants to keep track of everything that they purchased, you're obviously already keeping track of that. So you can allow them to log in to view their own purchases, for example. Nobody else logged in would be able to view their purchases unless they had sufficient administrative access to be able to view all the purchases of everybody. However, the security of that data is only as good as the login information that the person provides. So, if their password is password, then their data is not very well protected, just as in anything else. But WordPress does have a user role system that's quite robust, that's designed specifically to provide that kind of function. I mean, that's the functionality that I use for protecting content on my site, right? There's lots of video on my site that you can only view if you're logged in. Some content only view if you're logged in on a certain kind of member. You can only download the videos if you're an annual member. And so, I use this WordPress user role system to regulate that. Same thing is true for posting on the forum. Some parts of the forum are open to the public. Some parts of the forum are only visible to certain kinds of membership levels, and so on and so forth. And all of that is controlled by the WordPress user role system.
So that's very good. Thank you, Rick, for that explanation. I realize now that I've been through one lesson that kind of question is way ahead of where I am. I need to go back to the beginner stages of this. And,
well, as long as you know that's what you're trying for. I mean, if you're trying to...
I have an idea off in the future somewhere.
Yeah, so then WordPress has a system in place for controlling that.
To handle.
Yeah.
Very good.
And various plugins chime into that. So.
Okay.
Anything else?
Good. Not that I can think of right at the moment.
Okay. Well.
But thank you for
you bet. Thanks for joining.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. I think Angela had a question. Angela, I just sent you... Maybe you didn't have a question. Maybe I just saw you there and expected that you had a question. Let's see. Scrolling down through my list here. I have just sent you an audio pin, Angela, so if you are there and you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I don't have any other questions. So I'm ready for folks to chime in. If you've got a question, now's the time to ask it. I have another 15 minutes left in this class yet before we finished. Okay, Louise, I'm going to unmute your microphone. Good evening, Louise.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Enjoyed this class tonight. Good.
Good. Okay, so you had a question about pricing?
Yeah, I'm on the Studio Press site. I don't see a different price for a developer's license, so I'm wondering, are these just to use on the particular site you're buying it for, or can you use it over and over, or how does that work?
Genesis is fully and completely GPL, which means that there are no restrictions on how often it is used or how it can be distributed.
What does GPL stand for?
General Public License.
Oh, okay.
WordPress is founded on the concept of free software. Not necessarily free that it doesn't cost anything, but free in that there are no restrictions on its use. And WordPress obligates everybody who develops anything for WordPress to distribute their software with a GPL license. However, the GPL does extend only to sort of the PHP code. And so Thesis, for example, has a GPL for its PHP code, but has its own proprietary license for its JavaScript and CSS. Now that's actually consistent with WordPress's rules. That is, it's possible for you to have proprietary CSS and JavaScript code and proprietary images and things like that that are not GPL and still meet WordPress's licensing requirements. So that's why Thesis can require you to have a developer's license to use it on more than one site. However, StudioPress has chosen to allow all of their content to be GPL. So their images, their JavaScript, their CSS, and there are absolutely no restrictions whatsoever on how you use it or how you distribute it within the confines of GPL, which is why I can offer people the opportunity to, ask me for a copy of it, and I can give it without violating the terms of service with StudioPress, because that's explicitly one of the terms of service, is that there is no restriction on redistribution. On the other hand, I want them to be in business, so I don't want to just distribute their product for free. I mean, they spend a lot of money developing the product, and I want them to be able to, I don't want to undermine their business by redistributing their product for free. On the other hand, I'm teaching a course, and so I want everybody to have access to the course material. And
that's great.
So in terms of a developer's license, there's no such thing with a GPL theme, a fully GPL theme. You can use it on as many sites as you want. You can redistribute it. You can, there are some restrictions about how you have to leave its attribution. So if you went in and took their theme but erased all of the references to Genesis, then that would be a violation of the copyright, because you would not be attributing to them their work. But besides that, you can redistribute their work.
That's amazing. Let me ask you one more question. I'm going to convert a site that I have to Genesis for the sake of this class. Would it be best to do it as a subdomain or something, so that the site just stays intact until the new thing is developed? What's the best way to do that?
Well, if the existing site is active, then yes, I would develop it on a development subdomain, and it could easily be, I mean, that's what these are all, right? The domain here is BYOB Genesis, but SBYWH-final-agency, that's just a subdomain of BYOB Genesis, and same thing is true with SBYWH6, right? It's just a subdomain of Genesis that I'm developing on, or BYOB Genesis, and it's easy to do. And I've got videos on the site if you're not real comfortable with it, on how to set up the subdomain, how to build the site on the subdomain, and then how to transfer it from the subdomain to the main domain.
Oh, good. Okay, it's the transferring that I was concerned about.
Yeah, actually, there's only a couple of tricky parts. It goes pretty easily, and if you use Backup Buddy, it's flawless. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
I don't have Backup Buddy yet, but I really want that.
It's flawless. I mean, really, it's ridiculously easy with Backup Buddy.
How much is Backup Buddy? I forget. Is it a couple $100, $300?
No, I think you can get a developer's license for Backup Buddy for $150 or something like that. I think that's what I pay a year.
So much more.
What's that?
So why do I have such a bigger figure in my head? I think,
I don't know.
Is there something else you get with that? You get the bigger package? I'll have to go look at it.
I don't know. I have the developer version, and $197. And I guess since mine is an upgrade every year, I think I'm probably like $157 is what it costs me now a year.
Oh, so, okay, but it's $197 to get it.
Well, that's the developer suite, so that's absolutely everything they sell. I mean, that's all of their plugins. You can, for $150, I think you can get the developer's version of Backup Buddy, Yeah, unlimited sites for $150, 10 sites for $100, if that's all you want. But at that point, now, having said that, I've never used anything but Backup Buddy. So I pay the extra money every year, but I don't use any of their other stuff yet.
Huh.
Only
So
because
you could be using the $100. No, $100 was for one site, was it?
it's $150 for all sites. $100 was for 10 sites. I think it's $50 for one site or something like that. But
And so then annually it's less than that original price?
yeah, yeah.
Thanks for that. I could look on their site. Not take up your time, but
That's
thanks
okay.
for that.
You bet. Anything else?
All right. No, good. I'm really glad to be learning this. Really excited about the responsive learning. I just love your explanations about the responsive sites and how that all works. And
Well, good. I'm excited about teaching it too. I mean, I think it's a cool thing, and it's going to be relatively easy to do too. You're going to see. The one thing I add to it that Genesis doesn't come with right out of the bat is I create a plugin for making a responsive header image.
cool.
You can see that this header image changes when the menu drops down. Then I changed the header image so that the little tagline jumps up there, and then once it gets smaller, then I made the tagline a little smaller, and then it gets smaller and the tagline goes away.
And do you get to decide that the type is condensing that way, or can you say, no, I don't want it to condense, I want it to drop underneath, or do you get to change parameters or talk
No.
about, do you get to decide any of that?
You don't. The way it actually behaves, you don't get to decide. Like I said, I did a plugin that you'll have access to that changes the header image itself, and you essentially just create 4 or 5 different header images, and you insert them where you in the case that you want them to display in, so that it's not the same header image all the time. But besides that, you don't have any control over how this behaves. They've made some decisions for you. And if you really want control over that kind of stuff, then you want to take my class in May on how to create a responsive child theme in Thesis, and then you can tweak it to your heart's content.
Okay.
Okay?
Fun. Yeah, fun.
Great. Okay.
Thanks.
You betcha, Louise. Bye-bye.
All right.